That morning, the sky was unusually clear and blue. Sunlight pierced through the curtains, casting golden streaks of light on the wall. I woke up in a mood that was neither too bad nor too excited, just an ordinary morning, like hundreds of others. The alarm clock rang, I stretched, pulled the blanket aside, and told myself to get ready quickly to be on time for work. Everything followed a familiar routine: brushing my teeth, washing my face, making a cup of coffee, and quickly scanning the morning news. I even chuckled at a meme on social media, then frowned as I remembered I had an important meeting at the company today. Just get through today, I thought to myself. On the dining table, the loaf of bread still smelled of freshly toasted butter. As I ate, I thought about the pile of work waiting for me, the bills that needed to be paid at the end of the month, and all the unfinished plans. My mind drifted from trivial things like buying a new pair of shoes to major decisions like whether or not to change jobs. There was no sign that anything unusual was about to happen. If there had been, perhaps I would have paid more attention, changed my route, or even stayed home for a few more minutes. But that morning, everything was so calm that I paid it no mind. I put on my coat, grabbed my keys, locked the door, and stepped out onto the street. The familiar street stretched out before me, bustling with the sounds of traffic and the cries of street vendors. I blended into the hurried crowd, thinking that today would pass just like any other day. No one, not even myself, knew that in just a few hours, an event would occur that would change everything forever. I had no idea that on that morning, I was heading straight toward a moment between life and death, and that something extraordinary was waiting for me up ahead. The road was as crowded as usual that day, but something made me feel not entirely at ease. While waiting at a red light at the intersection, I met the gaze of an old man across the street. He looked at me for a long time, as if he wanted to say something, then gently shook his head. I was a little surprised, but quickly dismissed it, thinking he had probably mistaken me for someone else. I continued walking, but a strange feeling began to creep into my chest. My heart beat faster than usual, not because I was in a hurry, but as if my body was trying to warn me of something my mind hadn't yet recognized. I told myself it was probably from drinking coffee on an empty stomach and tried to take a deep breath to calm down. A car horn blared from behind, urging me to cross as the light had just turned green. As I walked, I felt as if someone was watching me. Occasionally, for a brief moment, I felt a cold draft brush against the back of my neck, sending a slight shiver down my spine. On the sidewalk, a woman holding a child suddenly turned to look at me. Her eyes were full of worry, and as I passed, she whispered something I couldn't hear. When I turned back, she had already hurried into a nearby store, leaving me with a vague feeling, as if everyone around me knew something I didn't. When I was only a few hundred meters from my workplace, the sense of unease grew more distinct. I suddenly felt my palms become sweaty. A strange thought flashed through my mind. Should I go back home? But reason immediately dismissed it. After all, I still had an important meeting waiting. I could not have imagined that those vague signs were the warning bells, heralding a life or death moment that was only minutes away. The roar of a truck's engine rumbled in the distance, blending with the chaotic sounds of the city. I kept walking at a steady pace, my mind on the upcoming presentation. But in a single heartbeat, everything changed. A long, piercing screech of brakes tore through the air. I jerked my head around. The blinding glare of headlights hit me straight in the eyes. Time seemed to slow down. I could clearly see every speck of dust floating in the air and the panicked face of the driver behind the wheel. The sound of metal grinding against the pavement rang out harshly, resonating with the terrified screams of people around me. My body froze, as if I were paralyzed in the middle of a swirling current of life. Then suddenly, an invisible force seemed to pull me hard. I don't know if someone pushed me or if it was just my own desperate reflex, but my legs stumbled back to one side. At the same moment, the truck brushed past me, the wind from its body hitting me so hard that my whole body swayed. The acrid smell of burning rubber filled the air, and the sound of my heart pounding in my ears drowned out all other sounds. I lost my balance and collapsed onto the sidewalk, my head spinning. In that brief moment, I realized I had just escaped death by a hair's breadth, and strangely, amidst all the chaotic sounds, I still clearly heard a deep, gentle voice resonate somewhere in my mind. "It is not your time yet, I am here." The sounds of the street faded, replaced by an unusual silence. I no longer felt my body lying on the sidewalk. Everything seemed to disappear. The sound of horns, the screams of people, even the sharp pain in my knee faded away. A thin white mist enveloped me, and a dim light spread throughout the space. I felt as if I were floating, light and gentle, no longer held down by gravity. Below, everything unfolded like a slow-motion film. My body lay motionless. A few people ran over, their mouths moving, but no sound could be heard. The feeling was strange. No fear, no pain, just a light sense of surrender. I realized I was on an invisible boundary, where one more step would mean leaving it all behind. A part of me wanted to move toward the light in the distance, where a gentle warmth was beckoning. But then, in that silent space, a sound rang out clearly. "You are not done. Go back." Those words didn't just echo in my ears, but vibrated deep within my soul. Immediately, a strong force pulled me back. I felt myself growing heavier. My breathing became rapid, and the sounds of horns and people rushed back in. My eyes flew open in a panic, and I realized I was still alive, right on the fragile line between life and death. In the moment when darkness seemed about to swallow me whole, time suddenly seemed to stop. There were no more car horns, no more chaotic footsteps. Everything sank into a strange stillness. And then from the depths, a voice resounded. "Do not be afraid. It is not your time." That voice did not come from outside, but seemed to emanate from my own mind, as if the speaker was right beside me, yet also everywhere. Warm, powerful, and full of authority, the sound didn't just touch my ears, but pierced straight through my heart, bringing with it an absolute sense of safety. In that instant, the fear of death vanished. In its place was an extraordinary peace, as if I were being held in the arms of someone invisible but very real. I didn't understand why, but I knew for certain that someone had just held me back. Some being who knew me, loved me, and didn't want me to leave. I wanted to ask, "Who are you?" but it was too late. A powerful force pushed me back to reality. I saw the blinding light of the sun, heard people calling my name, and felt my breath return to my chest. The smell of exhaust fumes and road dust rushed in, heavy but so real that it made me realize I was still alive. But deep down, I knew, from that moment on, my life had turned a new chapter, and I would never forget the voice that saved me, even though it had spoken only once. I lay there amidst the chaotic sounds of the street and the hurried footsteps around me. My body was exhausted, and each breath felt like hundreds of needles piercing my chest. A part of me just wanted to give up, to close my eyes and let everything drift away. But then from the deepest part of my soul, a surge of strength rose up. Not the strength of muscles, but an invisible, powerful energy that I could feel making my heart beat faster again. That voice still echoed in my mind. "It is not your time." I tried to take a deep breath, though each inhalation was a tearing pain. My hand moved slightly, fingers curling and then uncurling. It felt as if someone was taking my hand and pulling me up from a deep abyss, not letting me sink any further. I heard someone yell, "Hang on, don't fall asleep!" Those words merged with the energy inside me, urging me to hold on to every second of consciousness. I repeated silently to myself, "I won't give up. I can't." As my blurry vision gradually cleared, I saw the face of a stranger leaning close, their eyes full of worry but also determination. I realized that this life still had something waiting for me to return to, and I couldn't miss it. From that moment on, I knew I would fight, not just to survive this accident, but to find out why I had been kept here. The siren of an ambulance wailed in the distance, cutting through the thick air filled with the smell of smoke and blood. I heard it, but not clearly, as if the sound was coming from another world. My eyelids were heavy, pain spread throughout my body, and my consciousness flickered like a candle about to go out. Suddenly, a strong hand gripped mine tightly. A firm voice rang out right next to my ear. "I'm here! Don't close your eyes!" His face, or maybe it was a woman's, I couldn't be sure in the glaring light, appeared in my blurred vision. All I knew was that their eyes shone strangely, both urgent and reassuring, as if they knew for sure I would survive. I felt my body being lifted, moved, and the cool rush of wind on my face made me a little more alert. That person and a few others managed to get me out from where I was stuck in the wreckage. I heard the clanging of metal and someone counting a rhythm. 1, 2, 3. Then suddenly my body was pulled free. The open air rushed into my lungs, carrying the smell of road dust and the smell of life. Someone put a jacket over me, and I felt myself being placed on a stretcher. A figure in a yellow uniform, probably a paramedic, bent down to check my pulse. For a moment, I looked around to find the person who had first held my hand. But amidst the flashing lights and the chaotic crowd, I couldn't see them anymore. It was as if they had disappeared as soon as they were sure I was safe. I don't know who it was. A kind passerby, a rescuer, or an angel sent at just the right moment. But I knew one thing for sure. If they had been a few seconds later, I probably wouldn't be here to tell this story. A bright white light shone through my closed eyelids. I stirred slightly, my whole body feeling heavy as if pinned to the bed. A sharp smell of antiseptic and medical alcohol filled my nose. The distinctive scent that anyone who has been in a hospital can never forget. The sounds around me were initially vague. The beep, beep of the heart monitor, the distant roll of a gurney's wheels in the hallway, the sound of someone whispering. I tried to open my eyes. The light was painfully bright at first, but gradually I made out the image before me. My mother's face appeared, her eyes red and rimmed with dark circles. When she saw I was awake, she burst into tears, holding my hand and repeating over and over, "My child, you're awake. Thank God." Beside her was my father, silent, but his hands trembled as he placed one gently on my shoulder, as if afraid that any more pressure would make me disappear. Before I could say anything, my throat felt tight, dry, and weak. A nurse quickly came over, adjusted my IV drip, and said softly, "You're out of danger now. Just rest." Flashes of the accident rushed back. The screech of brakes, the blinding light, and then the mysterious voice. I remembered every detail clearly, as if it had just happened seconds ago. In that moment, I realized I was still alive, and it wasn't by chance. I felt deeply that an invisible hand had pulled me back from the brink of death. Lying there, listening to the slow, steady beat of my own heart, I knew this was a second chance, a gift I could not waste. After waking up and gradually recovering, only one question echoed in my mind. That voice, who was it? It wasn't like any voice I had ever heard in my life. It wasn't loud or rushed, but deep, warm, and decisive, as if it was both commanding and comforting. Just a few short words. "Do not be afraid. It is not your time." But they pierced straight into my mind, causing all panic to vanish in an instant. At night in the hospital, I barely slept. The faint yellow light of the night lamp shone on the ceiling, and the steady beep of the heart monitor served as a constant reminder that I was still here. In the darkness, I began to retrace every second before I lost consciousness. That feeling was nothing like a dream. It was so real that I could remember every nuance of the voice. When I was discharged, I threw myself into searching. At first, it was articles about near-death experiences online, then videos, podcasts, and personal accounts. To my surprise, thousands of people had heard voices or felt a strange presence when they were on the threshold of life and death. I bought books, from scientific studies to spiritual writings. Some explained it as a reaction of the brain when deprived of oxygen, creating hallucinations. But deep down, I knew my experience was different. It was too clear, too real. I started talking to the elders in my family and was surprised to find out that my grandmother had experienced something similar in a drowning incident when she was young. She said it was the voice of God. That answer made my heart tremble. I didn't dare to conclude anything yet, but for the first time in my life, I realized there might be a being who was watching over me, even when I was completely unaware. And from that day on, I knew I had to continue on this journey of discovery until I found the truth. In the days after I left the hospital, I began to hear more stories from people involved in the accident, and they further solidified my belief that the voice that day could not have been just a product of my imagination. The doctor who treated me said that, given the severity of my injuries and the time I was unconscious, My survival and intact recovery were almost a miracle. You lost a lot of blood and had a severe concussion. Normally, we don't see patients regain consciousness so quickly, and it's even rarer for there to be no serious long-term effects, he said, his eyes showing clear disbelief. A witness, the driver of the car right behind me when the accident happened, said that when he got closer, he saw me lying motionless, but my face wasn't contorted in pain or fear. It was as if you were at peace, he said, his voice still trembling at the memory. I also heard the story from a paramedic. As they were putting me into the ambulance, he vaguely heard me mumbling something. He couldn't make out the words, but he insisted the tone sounded like, I was talking to someone. I have absolutely no memory of saying anything. These pieces fit together, creating an extraordinary picture. Combined with the quiet nights when I closed my eyes and remembered that moment, I could still clearly feel the warmth that enveloped me, as if an invisible arm was holding me back amidst the chaos. I began to lean toward a possibility I had never seriously considered before, that a being more powerful, more loving than anyone I had ever known had intervened in that moment of life and death, and he had used that voice to keep me in this world. From that moment on, I stopped searching for answers with just my mind. I wanted to search with my whole heart, and my journey from doubt to faith had truly just begun. The accident didn't just leave scars on my body, it also carved a deep impression on my mind. Whenever I sat alone, I would remember the blinding light, the clash of metal, and especially the gentle yet authoritative voice that resounded in my mind. Do not be afraid, it is not your time. If I had died that day, who would have been the most heartbroken? This question kept circling in my head. I started to think about my family, the times I was so caught up in work that I didn't call my mother for months, the family dinners I missed for some important project. I remembered friends I was once close to, but with whom I had carelessly let the connection fade. I also looked back at how I had lived, chasing success, money, and recognition, but rarely stopping to ask, what am I living for? If tomorrow were my last day, would I have regrets? After the accident, the answer was clear. I would regret so much. During my recovery, I wrote down a list of things I had always wanted to do but never dared. Not grand goals like buying a luxury car or traveling the world, but simple things. Apologizing to an old friend, taking my mom to the market early in the morning, spending a full day just listening to my dad's stories. I also realized something profound. This life is more fragile than I thought. In just a moment, it can all end. But at the same time, it's this very fragility that makes every second infinitely more precious. That voice didn't just save my life. It opened my eyes to see that life is a gift that shouldn't be wasted on frivolous things, but must be lived fully, with love, forgiveness, and gratitude. And from here, I began to plan for a new life, not just to exist, but to truly live. After the accident, I realized I couldn't go on living with emotional wounds that had never been touched. There were people I once cherished, but because of a word, a misunderstanding, or a betrayal, we had turned our backs on each other. For years, I had avoided it, thinking time would heal everything. But the truth was, those cracks were still there, smoldering and weighing heavily on my soul. I started with a phone call I never thought I would make. On the other end of the line was an old friend, someone I once considered my best friend, but we had cut ties after a big argument. His voice was still deep as ever, only now mixed with a hint of surprise. I didn't beat around the bush. I just said, "I'm sorry for everything that happened." The silence that followed was so long I thought I would be rejected. But then he sighed and replied, "I'm sorry too. I've been waiting to hear that for a long time." We couldn't go back to how we were immediately, but at least the door had been open. I continued to call others, a relative I had been angry with, a colleague I had misunderstood. Each conversation brought me a piece of peace, as if heavy stones were gradually being removed from the backpack I had been carrying for so long. Most importantly, I learned to forgive myself. For years, I had silently blamed myself for wrong choices, missed opportunities, and the people I had hurt. After the accident, I understood that if God had given me another chance to live, I also needed to give myself a new chance. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but it frees me from its invisible chains. And only when the wounds were touched did I realize healing isn't about forgetting, but about remembering without the pain. At first, I intended to keep the experience to myself. It was too personal, too strange, and I was afraid that if I told anyone, they would think I was imagining things or making it up. But one afternoon, during a conversation with a friend who shared that he was feeling stuck and had lost faith in life, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I told him about that day, the accident, the moment near death, and the mysterious voice that held me back. I didn't embellish or omit any details. When I finished, he was silent for a long time, and then tears rolled down his cheeks. He said, "Hearing you say that, it makes me feel like there's still hope for me." His words made me realize that my story wasn't just a private memory. It could become a small light for someone walking through the dark night of their life. I started sharing more, in gatherings with friends, on social media, even at a community group meeting. At first I was nervous and hesitant, but every time I saw the light in the listeners' eyes, I felt I was doing the right thing. The surprising thing was, as I shared, people also opened up and shared their stories, their losses, their near-death escapes, the faith they had lost. We became very real with each other, no longer hiding behind polite smiles. My story turned out to have saved me not just once, but continues to save me every day, as I see it touch others' hearts and help them get back up. After the accident, I no longer saw life through the same old eyes. Every morning I wake up, I feel so lucky to still be able to breathe, to see the light, to hear the birds sing, and to feel the warmth of the sun. Things I used to take for granted have now become incredibly precious. I started to set a new principle for myself, to cherish every moment. No more delaying words of love, no more letting appointments be missed, no more letting anger linger. I learned to say thank you more often, to apologize more quickly, and to listen more carefully. But the biggest change wasn't just in how I lived for myself, but in how I wanted to live for others. My story of survival was like a gift, and I didn't want to keep it to myself. I joined mental health support groups, visited people undergoing long-term treatment in the hospital, and started a blog to share this journey. One time I sat next to a young man who was desperate after losing his job. I told him about my fateful day, and at the end of our talk, he said, "You don't know this, but your story just saved me again." Moments like that remind me that the reason I'm still alive isn't to continue as before, but to carry out a new mission, to help someone believe that no matter how dark today is, tomorrow can still be bright. From then on, every step I take is not just moving forward, but walking on a path that has been entrusted to me, a path of gratitude, love, and giving hope. Many months have passed since that fateful day, but the memory of hearing that voice is still as vivid as if it were yesterday. Every time I close my eyes, I can still feel the warmth and power that envelop me, pulling me back from the fragile line between life and death. I no longer have any doubts. I believe that the voice I heard that day was the one who saved me. It was not a coincidence, not a hallucination of a mind in panic. It was the intervention of a being who loves me and knows my every heartbeat, my every breath. From that day on, my life was not just continued, it was given a new purpose. I live to bear witness that this life is a priceless gift, that even when we think we have reached the end of the road, there is an invisible hand waiting to take ours. If you are reading these lines and feel that you are lost, I want to tell you, you are not alone. The one who saved me that day also loves and waits for you. Open your heart and give him the chance to lead your life. I believe that if he could save me from an accident, he can also save you from any abyss in your soul. That day changed me forever. From someone who was only chasing meaningless things, I became a person who cherishes every breath, every moment I have left to live. The accident didn't take my life. On the contrary, it gave me a gift greater than life itself, the true meaning of being alive. I believe that the voice that resounded that day was not a coincidence. It was a call from the one who loves me, the one who wanted me to continue this journey to seek, experience, and spread his love to those around me. Now every day I wake up with gratitude and a question. Today, how will I use this gift of life to do good? And the answer is always, to live fully, to love more, and to never forget that I was saved to live a meaningful life. If this story has touched your heart, please subscribe to the channel to continue sharing real stories of hope, faith, and miracles with me. Who knows, one day you might be the one telling your own story of being saved.